So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Dharma gathering. Tonight's talk is on meditation and working with strong emotions in the practice of meditation. So, I think probably the biggest misconception going is that, that when we get engaged in a meditation practice, we'll be able to bypass our feelings and our emotions and just simply attain a kind of quiet, peaceful state that is somehow without the emotions that plague us, or at least occupy us during the rest of our lives. So I thought that question comes up once people start doing some sitting practice, and it's a question with a multiple layer of depths in there. Excuse me. And it starts from just the sort of perception that those feelings are happening, all the way down to the root depth and cause of those feelings, which is something that we attempt to get at through therapy, through analysis, through healing, and we're going to talk about sort of all the levels of depth there, ranging from just the idea that we might be experiencing anger or frustration or irritation or longing or sadness, and something about just labeling and thinking and coming back to the breath seems kind of shortchanging the whole richness of that aspect of our experience. So I think most of you watching are practitioners doing some sitting yourself, but just to review, sorry everybody, this winter has just been pounding away. So I'll do the best I can. When we start working with the mindfulness and awareness practice, we're trying to come out of a thick fog or a whirlwind of mental activity, or even a gentle duster or a kind of swirling quality. That's what brings most people to the cushion, is to try to settle their mind, right? We feel, and if we've had a deep practice going for a while and we feel our mind is agitated, or things are piling up or gathering force and speed for us, that cushion can look very inviting as a place to go and just sort of settle in, allow the mind to settle down. And big aspect of relief that a lot of people will experience some dimension of, and we should. There's a notion of the sitting practice as an antidote to relating to our own mind in a way that is not quite peaceful or settled or satisfying or content, and trying to find stability and ground and clarity within that. So that is where the mindfulness awareness practice, or shamatha vipassana practice, comes in. That's what most of us are doing with our meditation practice. To do that properly, we have to relate to our body. We have to relate to the schedule and calendar of our lives, the cascading effect of never being able to get to practice. If I had $1 for every person who's come to a workshop and says, I've been meaning to, wanting to, intending to, wishing I could, and the simple answer to all that is, of course you can. Of course we can. We choose all day long what we're doing, and it's just a question of prioritizing it. If you prioritize the practice, then it happens. If you're not clear about it, there's also a sort of fog bank of not sure why I'm doing this, so therefore it kind of slips away. So those are really our two obstacles to relating to mindfulness awareness formal practice, is scheduling and not having a clear view or clear understanding of what the ground is that we're working with and the benefit would be. So a lot of times teachers are working with this latter point, in terms of trying to clarify the instructions, clarify the whole path, and we ourselves have to work with the scheduling and intention and putting our butt on the cushion as something to do that has real merit and value for us. So the bottom line there is that almost all of us will experience fluctuation in terms of our intention, in terms of our intensity, in terms of our commitment. That's really quite a natural thing that happens, because the very nature of the samsaric world we're engaged in is distraction from mindfulness and awareness. So if we get to the stage where we can kind of thread a mindfulness and awareness, wakeful quality into everyday life, that, of course, that's our goal. Our goal is not to become, as I've said a million times, a great meditator, but to really bring some of these qualities of the practice into mixing with eating food, with drinking something, with talking to a friend, with doing our work, with playing sports, with dancing. And it's extremely powerful and transformative to mix mindfulness with body activities and worldly activities. It's the ultimate kind of dharma, in a way. So the main principle of the shamatha vipassana practice, the main central principle, is creating a space, you could say. When you say, I need some space, nobody's ever come up with a better version of it than this, as far as I'm concerned. So, need some space. Meditation is the art of creating a container, a space, in which we can simply see how our mind works, and see the activity of our inner being, of our thoughts and emotions, with awareness, as opposed to just being driven around by them and being on impulse power from now till doomsday, just going impulsively from one thought to the next thought, from one activity to the next activity, from one mood to another mood, and really having very little control, in a way, over that kind of motion. And therefore suffering, in a way, if we're honest about it, by feeling a little bit like we're on a roller coaster ride of thoughts and emotions. So if there's any sort of feeling about that, of course, the way it expresses itself is that we say, what I'd really like is to be able to calm down or find peace or tranquility. But the meaning of tonight's talk is that there's no way to go around the activity in the mind and in the emotional stratas of our existence to find that peace, or to suppress that activity to find that peace, or to ignore it, or to manipulate it. So this is where the role of creating the dimension of spaciousness, which, by the way, takes time. If you want to create a space container, you also need time. And those are the two elements that are the key points of the shamatha vipassana mindfulness awareness practice. We need to allocate space and time, so both equally. So, and by the way, just to reiterate, if you are joining us live, quite a number of you will be watching this in the archives, and so you can ignore this comment if you are. But if you're watching live and you go to facebook.com/David Nichtern in the second window in your browser, you will be able to participate. And for this topic in particular, I'm going to invite you to, just as you're feeling it, go ahead and throw your comments and questions into the mix, and we'll spend maybe a little bit more than the average time, since this is such a a precisely personal kind of topic. So I see quite a few of you have logged on, including the wonderful and delightful Monica from Thailand, which is where and why and who I'm going to be with on Monday for a month. So I'll say more about that later in terms of the implication of doing the talks. But hi, Monica. See you soon. and I see lots of you from all over the place. So this is a nice gathering. Yeah, everybody with different degrees of snow, but there is no snow in Thailand, I don't think. There's sand instead. So, creating space, and of course what happens in that spaciousness that we create is many people will continue or even highlight the kind of speedy quality of the discursiveness in our mind, and the strong emotional tugs and pulls and impulses will be in high relief because we are neither acting out those emotions, which is what we do all day long. We follow the trail like hunting, like a hunter, nor are we repressing them so that they won't bother us, but we're just bringing awareness to the whole prospect, the whole area of thoughts and feelings. We're bringing awareness to that. And it's a very pure kind of awareness because we're not trying to manipulate in any way what's happening. It's very hard to get that idea across because we think certain thoughts and emotions are going to be more dangerous for us or more annoying, whatever you want to say. A simple example of that is if we feel bored, a lot of people take that thought very seriously and bolt rather quickly from a stimulus that may have a lot of information in it, but that we can't rest our mind long enough to sort of track. So we're really talking about bringing awareness, mixing awareness with arising thoughts and emotions as we're sitting there. And I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to encourage people to stop, or at least consider stopping other activities, even spiritual activities, to simply look under the hood of our own mind, activity, and emotion life. Just look at it before we try to achieve other levels of consciousness, before we try to tranquilize ourselves into a sort of blissful state, before we attach to any particular state of mind whatsoever. So there's the implication there that perhaps the whole thing is workable as it is if we allow ourselves to experience space and perspective on it, and see the wisdom or intelligence or within the activity that we're already involved with. So that is called the abstract watcher. We're actually putting in a second tier of consciousness. We're empowering a dimension of our mind, an aspect of our mind that enables us to simply see without judging, without manipulating, without getting upset, and it's just looking at what's coming up. So we are definitely creating a kind of dualistic situation, which is a more open and aware and neutral dimension of our ability to observe, is just simply looking at the kind of activity that arises for us when we're sitting still. So that's a very key point there. Within that activity, now we're sitting, right? So let's say we've all decided, okay, I'm going to do this meditation thing sometimes, and hopefully more frequently than not, just to sort of get the gist of it and the juice of it. We take a seat and we stop everything, and it's so essential. Everybody says, oh, I could meditate while I'm swimming or walking, and maybe you can, maybe you can't, but you definitely can meditate when you're sitting still because there's nothing else to do. There's no distraction. So we take a seat and we take a good posture, which is very important, not lying down or leaning back. And we have a feeling of like creating the ground of presence and being present, and in a way enjoying being present because our body feels good. We're not cramping or pinching ourselves. And then we begin to simply trigger a flow of awareness moments. The way that we do that is by using a simple object of awareness like the breath or hearing sensation, or touch or something you're looking at, and you bring your mind to a kind of abstract watching awareness space, and then you are not trying to trance out there. I've been sort of talking about this a lot lately. You're not trying to enter a trance by doing that, a stupid kind of trance, which is what Soking Rinpoche calls dumb shamatha. We're just seeing there's an awareness quality that is not trance. It's very not trance. It's vivid. There's this feeling of the energy being clearly experienced, of the sensations being clearly experienced, the sense perceptions are clearly experienced, including what arises in our mind and our feelings is clearly experienced, or at least seen in a non-reactive way. Very unusual activity, and when we're teaching this, it's almost always the case that people will try to add an element of manipulation in to their practice and move it away from an awareness practice, a pure awareness practice. So that's fine, but that's different from what we're talking about tonight. And you always have to allow for the fact, if you're doing something where you're introducing a kind of manipulation element, that may be coming from the same source that's creating the rest of the drama. And, it's sort of a double down. So we don't double down, we just take the first bet the way it's coming up and take a look at our hand, so to speak, using a little Las Vegas metaphor there. So to emphasize, we're not repressing anything. That's a misunderstanding, that you have to hold your nerdy, obnoxious thoughts and emotions at bay in order to meditate. That will give you a hernia if you meditate like that. It'll cause a struggle, a secondary struggle that our famous teacher Trungpa Rinpoche called negative negativity. Brilliant, great concept. We don't add another layer of don't on top of the already, layers of can't and won't. So it's okay to can't and won't, but don't, and add that layer of obscuration to it and resistance. So it's pretty raw. We're really willing to experience what's happening, in a kind of open way, So meditation is not, in this school, is not repressing anything. But the flip side is we're so used to tracking and following those feelings and thoughts. They so much are generating movement, karma, you could say, that by unplugging that part of it, that we're not actually acting on them either, we create this middle space of awareness in which we're neither repressing nor acting out any of those thoughts or emotions that arise. So that's very, very unusual. So what will we see if we take our seat and we just, open and bring ourselves into a state of present awareness by using a fulcrum of the breath, or, a sense perception? What will we actually experience? And this is, of course, where you want to pull back and go, well, why don't you do it and you tell me, Because for those of you who are teachers, we don't necessarily want to go on and on about managing other people's experience of meditation, but just setting some kind of ground and method. And then, it's true in our tradition that you get some instructions and you go practice. And then you bring back, sometimes you come back and, with your friends or your teachers, and you talk about aspects of the experience that you've had that are, maybe need clarifying or that are troubling. And it keeps coming back to the Dharma being just a sort of framework for you to relate to your experience with awareness, as opposed to trying to push or avoid it, which is the sort of normal course of events, trying to push or avoid. So what do we see, just in general terms? What comes up for people is a matter of record, because we've sort of seen and talked to many thousands of people over thousands of years who've tried this. That's what you're drawing on here. thousands of years of human experience and lineage. And you can assume that some of these people might have been extraordinary in some ways. You can assume some of them were like even more foolish and confused. But if you do the bell curve, the odds are most of them were kind of like us, and just really coming from the ordinary range of daily life and experience, and then being given this extra tool, this extra device for working with, along with, mixing awareness with the sort of thrust and energy of the discursive mind and the thrust and energy of our emotions. So one of the ways, there are many ways of looking at what's happening in this particular arena. Once we've entered the arena of meditation, and now we're sitting there, and now the only way you could really know what's going on is just sort of peel back the person's outer self, and if you had a stethoscope that could hear the mind going da-da-da-da-da-da-da, which I've called James Joyce mind, and people call monkey mind and spaghetti mind. There's no reason to insult any of that. It's just that's what's happening. There's a kind of stream of consciousness that most of us have going on during the day, and even at night in dreams. So when we peel that back and just look at that, we can see, and people have seen, that it's organized in a particular way, including the intense feelings that come up, to create a solid sense of oneself in the center of a drama that's unfolding. And it's like screenwriting, basically. We're screenwriting our own movie, and it's very powerful to see that, and also to see that some part of it, that we've taken it way too seriously in a lot of cases. We've become the victim of our own. We've cast ourselves in a sort of difficult screenplay, in which the odds are stacked up against us. We're struggling with a variety of seemingly external forces. We might see ourselves as the hero and sort of overcoming odds, maybe family things or work things. But the organization of that narrative and the feelings is to support a strong central character, and you can see that coming together. That's called the skandhas, the heaps of consciousness. There are 5 of them. There's other talks on that, so you can go back to the archives and look at those. But basically, it's a sort of accumulation of pieces of things, bundles they're called, heaps, and they come together to create a kind of solid sense of a what we call ego. In the Buddhist sense, ego has a sort of connotation of a fictional sense of self, not a healthy sense of self, but a kind of fictional and diluted sense of self. So we have to defend that, and then we get insulted, and then we get, we have pride, and we have all the kleshas arising from defending that sense of ego, which is, we've built up a whole array of defenses, which are basically called the kleshas, which we've talked about also before, or obscurations, And what are they? They're things like jealousy and pride and anger and neediness, and some of it is just kind of like endless filling of space. That's called ignorance, that one. It's just we fill the space endlessly for, it doesn't even matter with what. Anything to avoid the kind of dawn of present awareness. So the approach that that we take in our tradition is to not double down with the negativity, and give ourselves space and room to just see what is going on. What's the game we're involved with here? What is happening here? And there's some kind of loosening or liberation just in doing that much, actually, that people experience. Maybe it takes the form of not taking themselves quite so seriously, or seeing a habit or pattern that has become completely enshrined, you might as well put it up on your altar there. Whether it's resentment or rage, or it becomes almost a sacred cow in that sense. You don't want that touched. You don't want that looked at. All of the kleshas are sort of to avoid awareness. That's the underlying quality that they bring to us. So I have a few more things to say, and then I kind of want to hear what you all are thinking about on this topic. When people say, but what about emotions? Do I label emotions when I'm sitting and meditating? You're labeling thinking, and you're coming back to the breath. So, and if any of you haven't had this basic instruction, you can look on my website, and it's right there, taking your seat. So maybe there's some newer participants here, and you should look at that meditation instruction if you're just getting started. But the simple form of it is, and we need to reemphasize this over and over again, even if we've been meditating for years, decades, is taking your seat, very powerful. 2, bringing your awareness to your breath, experience of breathing, feeling of breathing, so that we have some fulcrum for present awareness. So you're bringing your mind to the present, and then your mind is going to continue with its momentum, with its habits, with its patterns of chewing through material, and some of those are going to have different degrees of intensity. So we have the narrative, and then we also have sort of highlights, which is what the emotions are. And what Rinpoche used to say is the emotion is really, when people would ask, is an emotion thinking? Do you label that if you're feeling like, terribly sad and you want to cry, or you're feeling really angry and you want to yell? That the emotion is, the narrative is mixed in with that. It's not like you experience pure emotion, actually. You experience a feeling that's mixed with a narrative, and usually a kind of self-justifying narrative, a confirming of self narrative. So the emotions are actually a deeper level and they're called feeling. They're a lower, closer to the source kind of aspect of the skandhas. And eventually, in the meditation practice, we go all the way back to the root, which is considered fundamentally awake or aware quality that is there all the time. We just simply going back to that experience. But since there's stuff piled on, these heaps, these bundles are piled on top of it, we're sort of stripping them away. And the first part of stripping them away is just seeing it clearly. But the emotions have another dimension to it, which is strong energy and strong dualistic energy. Usually there's oneself and other enacting some kind of powerful drama, competing or resenting or longing for or being pissed off at. So these energies are the intensity of the narrative. It's like now the movie we're adding underscore. It's like the music is going, yeah, this is the hero right here, and look at how poignant this moment is, So it's like music. It's energetics of the narrative. And so, of course, it cuts deeper into the fabric of who we really are, which is we are feeling beings. I mean, there's a lot of things you can say about what a sentient being is, and probably the two most cogent things is that we're aware, we have awareness, and we feel, we sense things, and we feel them very deeply. And that's why all of that experience in the Buddhist teachings is centered in the heart area. It's not just an abstract, like figuring out the equation of everything, the theory of everything. The theory of everything is already obvious, actually. It's something you can feel. It may not be something you could put into a thought formulation, because that's already the fifth skandha. It's already way, way later on. So the theory of everything we might get closer to it by really actually feeling ourselves and feeling the world that we live in a very direct and intuitive way. I can't really say too much about that. So, only other thing I wanted to get into is when you go into that realm of deeper level of energy and feelings, obviously the body is involved, because we store those kind of feelings. If we can't handle them while they're happening, we store them in the body. That's what the body is. It's a kind of storage unit, in a sense, an ongoing storage unit. And if we've, like, a simple example, if somebody's sort of, that you go to Catholic school and the nuns are whacking you around the head while you're trying to learn, not to pick on those people in particular, but everybody has a version of this, and then you see the person start to look like that, the body is storing that information because at the time we can't really handle the feelings we have about it. So the body stores them. And so to recover some level of feeling, we have to actually work with the body situation, not just the mindful quality. Which means basically we have to feel our body. Actually put our awareness into our body and feel it. And for some people who are even very advanced meditators, that's a whole nother level where you're willing to actually read the body and feel the energy in the body and what it's telling you about yourself. And then on top of that, there's the layer of the narrative that's sort of weaving all that together. So we do have this notion of, as we sit, sometimes things come to the surface more, and we might begin to pull out the little thread or the tail of a traumatic kind of stored experience. And there are many levels of practice, beyond just the mindfulness awareness practice, including purification and sort of even up to the level of chud practice, which is sort of really inviting those kind of powerful negative accumulations to manifest and talk to us again. It's very deep, and we shouldn't kid ourselves thinking it's just a question of like doing a little mind trick and you're going to sort of figure everything out and be clean and clear. There's a lot of depth to the practices that we do in the Tantric Buddhist system. But the main point at the beginning here is to become aware of what's happening and acknowledge it and be willing to have it be there. We have to be willing to be here. And if we have to look at how much of our activity is avoiding being here, just being here. So that's, this, for those of you who don't know, this weekend, which is, the February 13th to 15th, here in New York, my son Ethan and I are, going to lead a Shambhala training level 1 program, and the Friday night is open to the public if any of you are in the New York area. And you can also sign up for the whole weekend, although it's getting very full, so if you are thinking of that, you should do it soon. And that's the beautiful crystallization of the Shambhala teaching is that we have become alienated from ourselves fundamentally, and that a lot of our activity is creating a subterfuge or distraction from the ability to feel and be with ourselves in a full way. So we have ways of talking about that. Come along if you're interested in that. Some of you have already been there. But that's the essence of what we're talking about here. Is the first level is acknowledging feeling, acknowledging thoughts, and not trying to manipulate it, and leaving a space in which there's the beginning of perspective, the possibility to see clearly, more clearly than when we're actually engaged. So it's sort of like, watching the films from the last Sunday's football game. For the players, they say, oh, I did that, I'm doing that. I should have been there, I could have done that. And just more seeing the patterns that arise with that kind of abstract watcher, that mind that is kind of willing to look and just experience ourselves and make friends with ourselves in that way. So key. And there are so many other things that are sort of presented as meditating, and they're all good. I don't have anything particular to say, but in this case, this is a very powerful starting point for our practice to bring more awareness to what our any level of thought and feeling that we have is, just to see it as it is. So I think that's a good start for a discussion. And I'll mention again, if you're just tuning in for the first time or tuned in late, you should be seeing and hearing me. And then, in addition to that, if you open a second window in your browser and go to facebook.com/davidnickturn, you'll see a stream of comments, and this is live, and I'll read the comments and questions for those of you who are watching in the archives. But if you could, it's a good time now to go ahead and jump one in there for us all to look at, because some of you are all around the world, so good chance to do that, okay? In the meantime, I'll see if anybody's sort of, anybody's sort of taking a shot at it. Okay, so please go ahead and do that while I'm answering the one or two that have come through already. So Patrick from LA is saying, is it your experience that one needs to create a conscious intention for mindfulness awareness in those daily activities, or is it just an outgrowth of our sitting practice? I sometimes feel like I should be making more of an effort. Okay, so I think there's really two parts to your question, Patrick, which is one is creating conscious intentions for mindfulness awareness practice on the cushion, because without that, I think we talked about that last week or the week before, without intention, exertion, and discipline, I can tell you personally, and watching everybody else over the years, it just won't happen. It's so easy for it to slip away. And so the intention there and the exertion and the discipline to doing the formal practice, then I think if you're really working with that in a strong way and you're good, then you can sort of apply that same level of intention to everyday life. And there are some really interesting ways to do that. I think among all the Buddhist teachers out there, Thich Nhat Hanh really put a lot of things into play where during the day you have a little moment of recognition, which is actually a very advanced practice, recognizing awake mind in the middle of the action. You just kind of pause for a minute. This is called post-meditation practice. And you recognize where you are, and then you let go and you dissolve, and sort of allow yourself to just continue on. So one of the best ways, Patrick, is visual cues. And I think I've mentioned this before, but get yourself from the stationery store a paper of those golden dots, and just put one on your computer, and put one on your light switch, and put one on the refrigerator, put one on the bathroom mirror. And whenever you see that, instead of getting either completely intensified or pissed off, you just simply wake up on the spot for a moment. The way they do it in Thich Nhat Hanh's world is if you're in a community of people, they ring a bell during the day. Or, you could take on a practice of every time you get a text, instead of just going for the text, you take the text as a reminder. Okay, boop, it goes boop. I'm here now. Then you answer the text. So, because so much accumulation and acceleration of karmas happen to us in our lives during the day, whatever clever device you can use, but the main one is, as you said, creating the intention, and then allowing a moment of recognition of present awareness, even taking one breath. Let's just do it right now. I've been talking, incessantly. Let's just all take a breath together. And then you continue. Most of the time when we're talking, we don't allow that kind of space. So we don't want to create an exaggerated sense of it, but just layer it in there in a subtle way, so that we allow ourselves to coming back to present awareness. That's our practice, coming back to present awareness. Okay, so let's see who else has got anything fun, interesting, spicy, provocative, intelligent, clarifying, confusing, whatever you got. I think, again, now is a good time to write them in. Let's have a conversation about this. So Lori is saying something here. I'm hoping you might have something to say about the 5 skandhas in working with strong emotions. I don't have an experiential understanding of the skandhas, but I know there's juice there. Well, that's going to be hard to open that whole can. As I said, there's an earlier talk, Laurie. If you just leaf back through the now something like 120 archived talks, I'm sure there's one on the skandhas. I hope there is. I'm pretty sure there is. And also, if you want to read about it, the best book I know of is called Glimpses of Abhidharma by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And it's, you start breaking this stuff down. Right now we're getting it all as a lump, but when you start seeing how the experience develops and arises, it's going to be very, very informative, because usually we just go and we're in the middle of the action. So it's kind of like slowing it down and then looking what arises. But basically what it does is it goes from the zero skandha, which we don't talk about that much, is primordial present awareness. It really, if you look directly at it, we call it basic goodness in Shambhala, it literally doesn't come from anywhere. You cannot track its origin. And it literally doesn't seem to begin or end. Like, when was there ever a moment where your awareness completely ceased? It can pause or get covered over. That's what it does. But somehow we have this thing we can always come back to, which is present awareness. And it doesn't have a mama or a dad. And it's really vivid. It's really intense if you tune into it. It's luminous. It's clear. It's got a lot of qualities to it. And you can't really conceptualize it. It's before concept. It's beyond concept. So that's zero skandha. That's no skandhas. That's just basic quality of open awareness. The first skandha is the beginning of just a sort of sense of duality, of like Rinpoche used to talk about like a double take. You kind of go, and then all of a sudden there's a feeling of here and there, which is called form. It moves from the realm of energy into the realm of form, dual form, and that begins. It's so quick that it begins to compound itself to develop more strength of differentiation. So then you talk about feeling and perceptions and concepts, and then finally the fifth one is the stream of consciousness, which we take to be our awareness. We start with that. We think, I'm aware, and I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. But really, that's just the outer layer of a whole, time release photography that's already happened very fast in each moment. So, in some sense, we're starting to unpack that with our meditation practice. And as we go further and further along, there might be the notion of just actually cutting right straight through in some types of practice to the feeling of present awareness, just right through to it. So, for example, when we come back to the breath, in a way, that's what we're doing, right? We had all those concepts and things, and we're just going like, we say you're breathing, but really that's a very minimal kind of thing to pay attention to. So, that would be a short hop on that. And then please read that book, Glimpses of Abhidharma, if you have a mind to. And also you can, look at for one of those talks there. So let's see what everybody else is looking at tonight. Dan Crampton from Kalamazoo. Great comments tonight. Thanks. I have come to see feeling and emotions associated with compassion and the heart chakra, and thoughts to be associated with divine intelligence and a chakra in the head. Does that make sense at all? Well, I got to think about that for a minute. Feeling and emotions are more in the heart, you're saying, and thoughts are more in the head. Well, that makes sense. But they're having a dialogue. They're not divorced from each other. So, for example, if you have a feeling in the heart of sadness, if you can just let it be that way, it's very rare that we can just feel sad. I mean, there's usually a storyline about it and trying to do something about it. So, in our practice, feeling sad is fine. Even feeling angry is fine. It's not like we're trying to redesign ourselves, re-engineer it. We're more getting back to what we actually organically are in this practice, and how we feel and how we perceive things, and taking away some of the layers of sort of ornamentation and complication. But sure, heart, mind, I think they mix. And also our whole body, by the way, is engaged with awareness. It's very hard. I know there was one scientist who just came to the conclusion. He said, "Oh, the consciousness is not in the brain." Everybody's talking about brain. All the Buddhists are going like, "Okay, brain, 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 brain." From really strictly speaking, from a Buddhist point of view, the brain is another organ that's processing part of the data. But our whole body is awake and aware, and the heart is considered the seat of consciousness. So these are a few thoughts on that, Dan. I hope that makes some sense. Let's see who else is in the game. Neely. Okay, hi Neely. How are you feeling? Everything reasonably okay? So David, the negative emotion I have the hardest time just being present for is anger. Yeah, understood. With other emotions I can give really clear attention to the energy without a lot of story attached, but somehow I have a hard time peeling the story away with anger. Or maybe it's that when I rarely succeed in peeling the story in reactivity away, there is no more anger. And then you said you lost the Ustream video, but I don't know if anybody else has lost it. I don't think so. I haven't seen that. So hopefully we're in good broadcast range. I just upgraded my Wi-Fi here, and my internet speed, so we should be okay. But let me know. So yeah, coming back to your point, Neely, that's anger. It's funny, Trungpa Rinpoche used to talk about anger as being sort of the only thing that's sort of close to a dharma. It really threatens the dharma, because when you become angry, you kind of push everything away, including the possibility of gaining perspective on it. And it can also create a lot of harm and damage, both to oneself and to others, very fast. So it's fast energy, and it's hard to stay with it with awareness. It makes us want to get rid of that feeling. Really, a lot of what anger is wanting to get rid of the feeling that you have, which is an uncomfortable feeling. But if you can stay with that discomfort, personally I've found a lot of times, one layer down from anger, there's a kind of sadness, like you've been hurt, you've been wounded. So it's interesting to kind of take a look at, when you can catch a glimpse of it, see if there's other feelings that are being covered over by the anger, or if there's some information in the anger that you're just not ready to deal with. We get angry sometimes when we can't change something that we know we need to change about ourselves or our situation. So I hope that's helpful in some small way. And Beth is saying, Beth Messler, yay Beth, when I was sick and my father had died, I just found myself with tears streaming down. Today the tears flow if I sit long enough. Anniversary of everything is coming up. Sometimes the thoughts are incongruent with the emotion. I know when I'm racing around keeping busy, there's something under the surface that I need to sit with. Yeah. Well, that's a great point. I see there's other people are responding, and what I want to say is, for those again who are not used to this format, you can respond to each other and even take it offline later if you want to continue a conversation. So let's see what other what other people have come up with. Lori says, "Hope you're able to hold that sadness with kindness." Great point. Great point. Beth is saying, "Always working on the kindness part. Sometimes would rather avoid it all. Can't run away anymore." Okay. You can't even bike away, right, Beth? So thanks, Lori. Then Rebecca is saying, quoting from the Shambhala teachings, the genuine heart of sadness, which is kind of what we're saying underlies some of these things. So all good comments. I think actually those comments are enough. Now Christy, the Queen of Brooklyn, is saying, having a sense of friendliness towards oneself, in addition to having a sense of humor, seems like another way to working with emotions when they're going off the charts. So Christy is saying, friendliness towards oneself and some sense of humor. Figuring out how to do that isn't always so obvious to me sometimes. But when I figure out how to do it, it does help with breaking up the quality of fixed mind, and then my sense of humor can come out to play. Yeah. Humor is sometimes like one thing that kind of doesn't go with another thing. It produces a sense of irony. And it also is, as you said, Christy, suddenly free from fixed mind is a key element of sense of humor. You just didn't expect. Somebody told me a joke the other day, and I just didn't see the punchline coming. And it was that unexpected quality of them going there that was funny. So, yeah, good points also. Sense of humor. And we're all coming up with the same formulas. It's not just the Dharma teachings. It's human experience. Kindness, gentleness, precision, sense of humor, which is sometimes related to letting go. These are the kind of garnish of meditation practice, if you will. So let's see, Ben Garza. I don't think we've seen you before, Ben, so I'm not sure where you're from. My understanding is that in shamatha, you have to just observe whatever thoughts arise, I think maybe you mean, or emotions, and let them leave so you go back to your breathing. And on the other hand, vipassana is made precisely for processing moments of your life, what things as they are, and remove the ignorance we had at that moment. If we got angry, we apply compassion to ourselves and realize that we were selfish or just plain ignorant. Yeah. This is a tricky point, Ben, because that could take on the tone, if you can see that, of sort of, judgmental kind of quality, just feeding into that. So could that be an effective way to deal with the emotions we are feeling draining energy from us? It could be, and I certainly don't want to counterindicate any other instructions that you've had, but I would like to just say in this context that the main energy we bring to it is simple awareness before we're trying to change or process anything. And the whole notion of processing, you have to look at who is doing the processing, and you have to at least consider the possibility that the person doing the processing is the same person who created the thing in the first place. So we may not be getting as clear or free as we might have imagined. Whereas awareness is just kind of, nobody's really managing that process. It's just seeing it as it arises, which is the first part of what you're talking about. And from that point of view, vipassana is really seeing the detail of what arises, seeing that, maybe you would see clearly that and have the insight that the anger is coming from a place of, feeling trapped, for example. You could see that, that the jealousy is coming from a feeling of feeling inadequate. Sure, you could start to learn more about the depth of those experiences and noticing them with insight. But the idea of too much manipulation, too much judgment, I think in the beginning we might want to be careful about that, because that could just be that negativity that we were talking about earlier. So Ben, I hope that's helpful in some way, but by all means continue on if you have another round on that. So we have Allison from Long Island. Hi, Allison. It's very hard for me to shake a sense of awareness free from a need to do something about it. Yeah. To do better, to improve upon, which feels like a kind of ethical or moral imperative. Well, you could note that. Awareness is what's noting that right now, by the way, just to frame that somehow awareness is too passive and not enough. I mean this more when translating meditative awareness into the post-meditative realm of daily life, perhaps. Sure. Yeah, we're not advocating becoming kind of numb and passive. So that's a very good point that you're raising. Awareness does sometimes very clearly indicate you got to do something about this. That you could become aware of the need for doing something about something. But the compulsive quality of, what is it? What's the joke they say about meditating? Yeah, don't just do something, sit there. Love that. That's, if you've already been used to doing something about everything, it can be completely revelatory to take the opposite approach. So, and explore it. So, like, for example, if you're always used to, getting angry and resentful, even mechanically it can be interesting just to not go there and see if you can listen to the other person, for example, as opposed to jump on it right away, or be patient, for example. So we do have, Alison, as you know, a way of cultivating what they call the paramitas, or the sort of where you are starting to, in a sense, manipulate experience towards a more positive outcome, which I think really is part of Ben's question. Your question is, sometime we do begin to work towards a more, positive, energetic outcome and field. So those are really good questions.